Welcome to Tarina Anthologies' third video, where we are starting our first book club, where we will be discussing Beck Michaels' Divine Blood. And our Kate, she actually had an interview with Beck, right?
Yep, we had a lot of fun. We talked about some of her technique, some of her background, and how she got started with Divine Blood. So it's a good call. You'll get to hear it later.
Sounds good. All right. Anybody have anything that they want to start with, jump out with about our characters that we see throughout most of the book are going to be Dinah and Cassiel and Zev, who is my favorite character. I'm just going to tell you now. It's kind of too bad he's her cousin, right?
I know, right? That's what I thought.
I was like, he's so great. He's so dreamy.
I know not everyone read the whole book yet, but there's also a bromance that you might be missing out on.
Oh, really?
Get to the end of later in the book, so that's another carrot for those of you who haven't finished yet.
I have not finished, and I'm so excited for that.
It's a very
romances are awesome.
Yeah. And I think that's a hard thing to write. Well, because I'm not a dude, so like, I feel like if I try to write a bromance, which I do try, because writing reverse harem, there's a lot of intimate relationships between the male characters as well. I
struggle sometimes with male characters in general. I'm like, do I actually sound like a boy here, or do I sound like a girl who's trying to sound like a boy here? So,
yeah, my ex was just reading Imogen, and he read the part where Sawyer's like pushes her up against the wall, and he's like, "Oh, really?" And I was like, "What? Would that not happen? Is that not a guy thing? Would you not do that?" He's like, "No, it's fine." I'm like, "Oh, okay." But
without male characters is hard.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I just said writing male characters is definitely hard. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt or nothing.
Okay, but we do a better job than men write female characters.
That is true. That is true. Definitely true.
I was gonna say, it's weird. I actually find writing male characters a little bit easier than writing female characters.
Okay. What do you find easier about it?
I don't know. Just the dynamic between them. I think I have a lot of practice at home, with the two boys, so I see it constantly. And
yeah,
I can kind of go up to
that dynamic.
Exactly. I see it pretty much every day, so I'm like, oh, I'll just write what I saw today.
Yeah.
I do love the way she used the multiple point of views, so I love, you get to see things from all different perspectives, which adds a lot of, I think the story would be very confusing or not as interesting without those.
Yeah, with only a third of the story.
Yeah.
So it got really exciting for me and pulled me in a lot when Dinah goes into the woods and she kind of meets Cassiel and links back up with Zev, and then they go back to the castle. And I just, for me personally, as a mixed person, I really related to how that scene in the study where they're talking about, and then later on the balcony, where they're talking about some of the half-breeds or half-borns, and she says, like, that doesn't mean they have any less right to live or exist. They're just the same. And I feel that on so many levels as kind of growing up and feeling as other at times, just because I grew up with my white family. And it kind of touched me. I was like, oh, okay. I don't really know anything about the author, other than I did listen to a little bit of your interview with her. But I thought it was really great the way that she portrayed that otherness, and Dinah being so accepting of it that she doesn't even think, it doesn't even cross her mind at first that Cassiel may be different. So
yeah. Yes, she's such an innocent, naive character to start, and I have a weakness for those. I write them too. Those innocent, naive, like, what's going on around me? People who suddenly have the real world like shoved down their throat in a book. So that,
and it's so funny because like she thinks she knows, you know, when they're confronted with the werewolves, and she's like, I know enough
Yeah.
to stand up to an alpha. And you're like,
Werewolf.
no, sweetie, you don't know. You can't stand up to an alpha.
Honey, no.
And I think that otherness is also kind of universal, even for anyone who, like, I don't know, I was always solitary growing up, and it's always nice for me to see a character who's not like in the clique or whatever, you know. She's doing her own thing, Cassiel's doing his own thing, and they're making their way without being necessarily accepted by the larger group. Zev is not accepted by the larger group. I was never accepted by the larger group.
Same.
Sometimes my childhood insecurities are now coming out to play.
Get a book.
And I actually think that kind of works too, because, you know, Dinah herself is, maybe that's part of why she does it, why she doesn't look at them any different as people look at her, you know, even in her own town as.
They alienate her, yep.
Yeah. She chose the name Cassiel. Well, she like did the whole thing of the celestial beings from the Bible and Hebrew origins, and she picked the name Castiel because it means speed of God, and she said, and soar away because it can fly. But I think that's pretty interesting how she's actually marrying a bunch of, she's pulling from different cultures and marrying it together to give us this great story of this journey.
Yeah, the mythology of it's pretty cool because it's like so many different elements. Like I've read a lot of like angel books, you know, like one of my favorite books is kind of an angel book, which is The Daughter of Smoke and Bone. They're not actually angels, but whatever. We won't get into that book. That's a different book club thing. But you don't usually see like shifters and angels in the same book.
Yeah.
Like I liked the way she kind of spun them together.
Yeah, I like that. And then I don't know. I'm kind of at this point where I'm like, I hope he doesn't betray her. Like, I'm only like 32%, and I'm just like, if he betrays her, I'm gonna kick his butt. Jump in the book with my pitchfork. Just take care of him.
I really like Cassiel because he has that thing that's like my favorite thing that male MCs have, which is where they're like so reluctant to get involved, but like drawn to it. Yeah, so they have to, but in their like soul, they're like, oh God, I don't want to do this. But now I
love that.
That's my favorite thing.
That's awesome.
I think Zev falls under that too, because I think he has a strength and a power to him that he doesn't want to own. You know, his constant fight with the madness, and he doesn't succumb to it because of his familiar love for his cousin. And she gives him something to hold on to, but he has to fight it, and sometimes he thinks it'll be easier to just kind of give in and let the madness take him. And I think that's a struggle that we kind of all can face, is that like, wouldn't it be just easier to get, it would take it really dark now, guys. Wouldn't it be easier to just give in and forget everything and run wild as a wolf for the rest of my life? I think it would be pretty.
Yeah, this is like a daily consideration. Like, do I really have to like live a normal life? Can I just go live in Chaz or Chop or whatever that place is?
Yeah, let's go.
Then I watch the news and I'm like, no, I don't think I really want to live in Chop after all.
No.
My day job.
Her style, the people on reviews said that her style is really good. Like the reading style, it's really smooth to be able to get through. So, and then hearing everything you guys are talking about, I'm like really even more excited to read it. So I just want to be able to get it now. Like really, you know. So
yeah, I think most of the books that I read are with the exception of the books that I read from you guys, they're in first person. Most reverse harem authors that I read write in first person. whether it's present or past tense is varying, but I always find it a little harder to connect with people in third person. You know, I feel like they're not talking to me, like somebody's telling me about them. But I didn't have that problem with this book. I really felt that I was able to still gauge their feelings, their reactions, especially when you read like from Zev's point of view, because he has his heightened wolf senses. So you're getting how Zev is reacting to it, and then you're also getting like this person's heart rate was elevated, or he could smell the fear on them. So you're getting a little bit of a bigger picture that way as well. So I definitely think that her writing style, I'm really excited to see what else she comes out with, you know.
Yeah, it flowed very well. There was no point where I was like, this is boring.
Oh yeah. I'm only like 20% in, but I'm really interested in it. I like it.
Even that very first opening was just like, I normally don't like reading stuff with kids, but just that whole scene with the fear was real. It was really, really.
No, and what a way to show it too, is like her being there and in a dream, and so she knows what's going to happen. She's trying to, but there's nothing she can do.
It broke a rule too, because they always say don't start your book with a dream.
Yes, yeah.
You did.
Yeah. And it worked. It totally worked.
You know, I feel like rules aren't that important, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Smooth writing, definitely.
You write what you want.
Yes.
I will.
And whenever someone does break the rules, I'm like, look, they did it and it's still good. Yes.
Yeah, see?
I don't care.
I like all my adverbs.
Yeah.
So if you haven't had a chance yet to pick up Beck Michaels' Divine Blood, definitely do that. We're going to leave the links to the Amazon page for that in the info box below. And follow her on all of the socials, because she is awesome, and I'm excited to see what she's coming out with.
And if you read her book, do that awesome thing where you leave a review on Amazon, because as a writer, I know it's so hard to get people to leave a review, and we all appreciate it so much.
Yeah, the biggest thing you can do for an author is leave a review. So, yeah. All right, guys, thanks for stopping by, and we will definitely catch you on our next video. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Tarina Anthologies' first book club author interview. For those who don't know me, I'm Kate, and we're here today to talk with Beck Michaels about her fantasy novel, Divine Blood. This book literally had everything in it that I love. Shifters, celestial beings, magic, a young, impulsive, but tenacious female MC. I could gush over it all day, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's meet Beck, and then we can dive into her book. Hi, Beck. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about yourself to start off. Where you live, what you like to do besides write, your favorite book or author, pets, anything you think is important about you.
Okay, I'm a California native living in quiet Indiana with my husband and 2 little ones. I work from home writing my own imprint called Puma Press. I also work part-time as a graphic designer under my other business called Whimsy Book Cover Graphics, where I design covers for indie authors, and I am an author myself. So I published my debut novel, Divine Blood, on June 3rd, and it's the first book in a dark epic fantasy series. Besides writing, my obvious pastime is I love to read. So, if reading could be a professional career, I might have gone that route.
I'm right there with you on that. So before I start asking you questions about your book, why don't you just give us a quick summary of what it's all about?
Okay, so like a super short description, Divine Blood is about a girl who goes on a great adventure to find a treasure island in search of a magical item she needs to destroy a demon. And she's accompanied by a mad shifter and a grumpy angel who can't decide how he feels about her. It's a medieval story with lots of magic, action, feels, and good bad guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved all the different elements that you included in it. I know from stalking your Instagram page that we're fans of a lot of the same authors, which is part of what prompted me to grab your book. Can you tell us a little bit about which authors you love and how they inspired your writing?
Yeah, so like let's start with the obvious. My favorite author, which you'll always hear me say, is the Queen of Fairies, Holly Black. Holly has been such a huge inspiration. Her magical worlds is what inspired my love for fantasy. So I began writing Divine Blood around in high school around the same time I first read her modern fairy tale series. And if I had not discovered her books back then, I doubt I would be the same writer I am today. I'm also a fan of Sarah J. Maas. Believe it or not, I did not read any of her books until the end of last year. And I fell in love with her Court of Thorns of Roses series, you know, of course, with Rysand, because I mean, who's not a fan of winged males? So I like how she writes her character in theory and development. Like, she does it so well. The relationship that she builds between them really speaks to me, and it's like something that I really want to implement in my writing. And another one of my favorites is, of course, J.R. Tolkien. He was another big influence that shaped some of my characters, like Ron. He's my Legolas, if no one's noticed that. And I rewatched the Lord of the Rings trilogies like every year. So like most of my fantasy creatures were also inspired by his world of Middle Earth. And another one is Neil Gaiman. He's a big favorite of mine. The Yellow Caravan and the use of Stardust that I mentioned in Divine Blood, it's all a nod towards his book Stardust, which I absolutely love.
Excellent. Those are some really great choices, and a lot of them are on my list as well. So let's talk a little bit about publishing, because publishing a novel, I think personally for me, writing a novel is a lot easier than actually doing the editing and everything that's required for publishing. So have you always wanted to be a writer?
I think a part of me has always wanted to be a writer. Like, I find ways to express myself as a child artistically and through word. The first book I published was like in third grade. It was like an elementary school project. And it was like a short story about a baby toucan separated from its mother. I think I still have it somewhere. And I love to draw a lot as well. So like around high school, when I first wrote Divine Blood, I melded the two together, you know, art and writing. And originally Divine Blood was supposed to be a comic or a manga, for those who understand the term. I had drawn characters, and I like drew the first chapter in comic form, but I deviated from that as I switched to writing. I do have the drawings somewhere. I'll probably post them up on my website soon.
That's awesome. I used to draw a lot, and I haven't in years, but recently with all the chaos that's going on, I actually got a sketchbook and started picking it back up. So that's cool that you're into that too.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the publishing process for you. Did you self-publish? What did you love or hate about the process?
I'm a self-published author, so I published Divine Blood through my company, Puma Press. And I mean, originally I did want to be a traditionally published author, but after doing some research, I found that I prefer just to self-publish. I'm a control freak, so I need to have control over my story and my book baby and all the little details that go into it. So, of course, it did put a lot more work on my plate, but I can still get into libraries and like bookstores like Barnes and Noble, and I like having that control. And well, hate is a strong word, but I dislike all the time that it takes, because I mean, I'm doing most of everything myself. I did hire designers and formatters and editors, but a big chunk of time goes towards marketing. So like I have platforms on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, my website, and then there's my newsletter that I manage. And a lot of those, that takes a lot of time out of my day.
I hear that. I'm in the same boat. But the gatekeeping in traditional publishing is kind of a turnoff. And like you said, I agree. The whole losing control thing. I really wanted my own cover. That sounds like a silly reason to not traditionally publish, but I'm a little obsessed with my cover, so I would too. Maybe it's because I'm also into art, but I was like, I don't want someone else making my own cover.
Yeah. And then like no one talks about it too, but I think, I mean, within time, I believe you can make more money than a traditionally published author.
I agree. The royalty structure is definitely a lot better. As long as you can get
Yes.
yourself out there.
Yes.
So how about writer's block? Do you ever get writer's block? And what do you do
I
to
do. I do. It's normal for everybody to get writer's block, but it's something that I also call just sick of writing, you know, because sometimes my idea well, that I like to call it, it just dries up and I'm sick of looking at my computer. So when that happens, it usually means that my brain just needs a break from working on a story. So it helps me just to do something else for a while. If I can read, I'll binge read, or I'll binge watch my favorite TV shows. Sometimes all I need is just to, you know, see an interesting fight scene or read a perfect line, and it sparks the inspiration again.
Absolutely. Reading, it always helps me too with that. So speaking of reading, let's talk about reader's block. Do you ever experience reader's block?
Yes.
I know I do.
Yes, actually,
For months
yeah.
the coronavirus thing started, and your book was actually the first one I picked up when I was like, I gotta read again. So you broke my reader's block.
Oh, yay. I'm glad to hear that. I actually have reader's block right now. So if you have any books you can recommend, you can send them my way.
All right. I'll message you on Instagram afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, I treat reader's block the same way I do as writer's block, and I just focus on other things
Yep.
until I find a book that grabs my attention.
Yep. All right, so let's talk about your book. So one of the things that really grabbed me about Divine Blood was the incredibly detailed world building. Can you tell us about how you design your worlds? Do you do it in advance? Do you make it up as you go along? Do you use any apps, or do you just, write it out in a notebook? How do you handle world building?
Well, before I used to just write because it came, because I'm a pantser, but I find that doing that leads to a lot of rewrites. So I've learned that the best way is to plan in advance. And I don't use apps or pictures. I mean, I just come up with the world in my head, and then because world building is really important when it comes to fantasy. So you need to know your world. And by this, I mean, you need to know the history and the culture and the rules of magic, if you have magic in your world, and the people and the creatures that populate it, and even like the plant life. Knowing your world thoroughly, like, it will naturally solidify your story so that readers sense that it's like a real place. So so I try to generally plan in advance, like a different, like say for the sauces, for example, I generally not too detailed unless I'm going to talk about it, but I do have an idea of the culture and the past and dislikes and what they don't like and what they believe in. So I have this generally for each group of people, and then I do the same thing for the continents in the world. Like a general, not don't go too details if it's like an outside area that I'm not going to delve into with the story, but I'll mention it in passing. So, it kind of like helps with the world a bit more.
Yep.
But wherever they
I've gone
are.
too far sometimes, and I have to rein myself in and be like, listen, you're supposed to be writing a book. You don't have to have every single little aspect on paper before you write the story.
Yeah, only where they're going to be, because that's the base part. You don't need to have the whole details, but you do from where the story takes place.
Absolutely. Another thing that really grabbed me was the names you choose. I laughed a little because you used the name Soraway for your Celestial Prince. In my debut novel, I used the name Skyborn for my Sky Fae Prince. I was like, oh, we're on the same wavelength there. How do you pick your names? Do you just flip through a name book, or just look for words that grab you? Do they have any meaning? Well, obviously Soraway, that one, but in general, names have any meaning behind them?
Yes, I touch on meaning and background and culture when I choose names. But I only do this for like the main characters, not for the side characters. So for Cassiel Soraway, for example, the Celestials, their culture, like in the story of them, is based loosely off the angels in the Bible. And their culture, I went a little bit for like the Hebrew culture. So I wanted a biblical name for him. So Cassiel's a break it means speed of God. And of course, Soraway you get because he can fly. So that's how I picked his name.
Another thing that I really found interesting and enjoyed was your multiple point of views. not that many books, I guess more are doing it now, but a lot of books just stick with one character throughout. And I really love multiple point of views because it kind of gives you a look at what's going on behind the scenes with all the different characters. Did you start out with multiple perspectives? Was that your plan, or did it just kind of evolve that way? Why did you choose to use multiple POVs?
So like when I read, I prefer to read in first person and I prefer one point of view. But when I first read Divine Blood, I think I went with like omniscient point of view because there was just so much going on, and I eventually switched to third person and multiple point of views because like with Divine Blood, there's just so much happening. There's so many background details that will get missed if it's only Dinah's point of view. So each character and plot line is part of this big web that I have to keep track of. And so giving them their own view helps the readers learn about them, to see who they are, what they care about, what they're doing, and why it is that they're doing what they're doing. So the story wouldn't be the same if it was only one point of view.
Absolutely. I think it worked really well for you. I kind of wound up doing the same thing with my novel. I started it in first person present tense, and it ended in third person omniscient from 3 different viewpoints. So I know how they evolve like that.
Yeah.
And I have one more, major question, which is about your setting and your description. I really fell in love with your descriptions. Some of them were just so beautiful. And I know I'm not alone in saying that I struggle, for me, especially with interior descriptions. I'm like, there was a rug and a wall and this sucks. So how do you conjure up these gorgeous descriptions that we find in your book?
Thank you. Well, I mean, I'm with you. I've also struggled there, either with not describing enough or over describing. So it's just having to find a good balance between the two. So you don't want to describe stuff that aren't important. You can, mention here and there, but also it's also important for the reader to be able to come up with their own imagination of the setting, because you don't want to tell the story to them. You want them to also be able to come up with their own views. So with the way that's helped me with settings is that I try to think reader first. They cannot see what I see in my head, so I simply picture myself there and I describe what I'm seeing while I'm talking to somebody that can't see what I'm seeing, and that's been a game changer for my writing.
That makes a lot of sense. Sometimes I wish I could just take these movies that play in my head and make them go straight to the paper without my fingers and having to translate them.
Yes.
So after reading Divine Blood, I'm really desperate for more. So what are your plans going forward? Do you have any sequels or other projects in the works?
Oh yeah. So after publishing Divine Blood, I'm taking a little bit of a break, but next month I'll start working on the second book, which is called Bonded Fate. I don't have a release date yet, so I'm trying to aim for December, but maybe we'll probably see it next year around February-ish time. And I'm also working on a prequel. It's called King's Oath. It's a novella, and it follows High King Yuel, Castiel's father. It takes place in the Kingdom of Helios 20 years before the events of Divine Blood. And it's basically a tale of a bitter king who must decide between love and duty, and whether the decision to ultimately affect the future of his reign. It's a little spoilery, so I'm holding off from releasing it until probably about I'm going to say maybe wintertime in 2021, possibly after book 3 of the series is out. And the Guardians of the Maiden series is going to be long, so I'm planning at least 7 books that follows the journey before they reach Mount Ida. I know a lot of people were hoping to see Mount Ida in book 2, but there's just too much happening for that to happen yet. There 2 more Guardians are on the way. They visit several places and they meet many people, and there's a lot of obstacles that they need to deal with before they can reach Mount Ida. The Shadow Demon, I was like a spoiler alert for everybody. The Shadow Demon is like the ultimate villain. They're not going to reach him yet until they all have miles of growth to do before they can get to that point.
Absolutely. I actually, again, had something similar happen. I was planning a trilogy, and now I'm in the middle of book 2, and I already put out a prequel novella, and I'm like, there's no way I can possibly make this a trilogy. Like, There's no way I can tie up all these loose ends. This is going to be longer than that. And then I have these little side projects, like a novella about one of the characters, because I wrote like way more about her than needed to be in the book and had to cut it all. So it's easy. It's crazy how these things just sprawl.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because I know that it's not going to be 3 books. I know some had predicted that. I was like, no, sorry to disappoint you. It's going to be a long series.
As long as you don't pull a George R.R. Martin and you actually finish it, so we don't all go crazy.
I originally wrote the story about 15 years ago. So when I was in high school, it's about junior year, maybe 15, 16 years old. And I wrote the story in these 10 notebooks. Okay, they're like these thick, neat notebooks. And I finished the whole story, but I got stuck on the end and I put it away. And about last year is when I took them out again and I was reading them and I got to the ending and I was like, where's the ending? I need to know what happens, but I guess that's up to me. I have to write the ending. So I basically know how it ends. I just have to write everything else that happens first before I can get to that. Yeah.
I know I can't wait to read more, and I think everyone in our book club so far has said they're really enjoying it too, so I feel like they're on the same page. Do you have anything else you want to tell your readers or tell our book club before we do our little meeting?
Yeah, I mean, if you love the book, you should come join the Facebook group for Divine Blood. A lot of fans are congregate there, and they like to talk about little things about the book, and we have little fun questions that we discuss. So if you guys like it,
Love Facebook groups,
yeah.
so I'm in.
Yeah, come join us.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Beck. I had a really good time talking to you. I can't wait for your next book, and I know we're going to have a great time discussing your book next week. So thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.